He woke to the sound of the city stirring, the distant hum of traffic filtering through his thin bedroom window. It was that familiar kind of morning where everything felt simultaneously alive and distant. He had learned over the years that crowds could be just as isolating as empty streets. There was a peculiar kind of loneliness that thrived not in silence, but in the constant presence of others. Have you ever noticed it? The way a bustling street or a packed train can make you feel profoundly alone? That was the question he carried with him as he sipped his tea, staring at the gray skyline outside. Every day he walked the same route to work, a path lined with glass-fronted offices and muted cafes. People brushed past him without a glance. Everyone was moving somewhere, yet no one seemed to notice the quiet weight he carried. It wasn't that he wanted attention. He had grown used to moving through life without it. But there was a subtle ache, the kind that only surfaces in moments of pause. Do you feel that sometimes? That quiet ache that comes when you realize even in a crowd, no one truly sees you. He remembered the morning a few weeks ago when he had lingered longer on the platform, just listening to the rhythmic clatter of trains. He noticed how strangers, even as they pushed past him, carried their own invisible burdens. And somehow, recognizing that made the world feel slightly less heavy. There was comfort in the shared, unspoken experience of being human, even if it went unnoticed. Sometimes it seemed the small acknowledgement of someone else's presence, silent and fleeting, was enough to soften the edges of solitude. At lunch, he found a quiet bench in a small park tucked between office buildings. The trees were sparse, but the air carried the faint scent of rain from the morning drizzle. He watched people hurry by, faces focused, eyes forward, conversations muted behind headphones. And yet, for the first time that day, he felt a subtle connection, not through words, but through observation. Each hurried passerby was living a life as intricate and complicated as his own. He realized that loneliness wasn't a measure of absence, but a measure of unseen depth. Have you ever paused, even for a moment, and sensed the intricate inner worlds of the people around you? Later, he returned to his flat, the evening settling with a soft, almost imperceptible calm. He had grown accustomed to the quiet rituals that marked his day, the careful boiling of water for tea, the gentle hum of the kettle, the way the soft city lights shimmered on wet pavements. These small, ordinary moments were grounding. They reminded him that even when surrounded by people who might never notice him, he could create pockets of meaning, pockets of presence for himself. Loneliness, he realized, was not always about others. It was about reclaiming a sense of being alive within the self. He thought of his colleague, someone he had passed countless times without a word, who had smiled briefly this morning. It was small, nearly imperceptible, but it lingered in his mind. Small gestures, fleeting recognitions, they mattered. Perhaps that was a quiet lesson of living in a city so full that the moments when someone's glance, a smile, or even a pause of acknowledgement reached you, no matter how brief, carried weight. They reminded you that you were not entirely invisible. As night approached, he settled into his favorite armchair with a cup of tea, listening to the distant rumble of buses and the occasional bark of a dog somewhere down the street. The loneliness hadn't disappeared. It never truly did. But it had shifted. There was room now for a kind of peaceful acceptance, a gentle recognition that being alone in a crowd was a state he could navigate. The mind, he reflected, was as much a companion as anyone else, and if he tended to it quietly, he could find balance, even amid the most chaotic streets. He let himself linger on thoughts that day, on the quiet victories of surviving small, overlooked moments. He imagined the lives of strangers, what they were thinking, what burdens they carried, and it gave him a sense of belonging, a reminder that no one is truly alone, even when unseen. Sometimes the city's pulse and the shared hum of life itself can be a companion, if only you listen closely enough. Finally, as he prepared for sleep, he thought of the small, ordinary joys that had punctuated the day, the warmth of his tea, the soft murmur of a colleague's greeting, the gentle rhythm of trains passing. They were simple, quiet, and yet profoundly sustaining. He realized that even in the midst of a city crowded with strangers, it was possible to feel quietly, gently connected, not to the masses, but to life itself. And with that, he let the evening settle, carrying a subtle reassurance that tomorrow he would rise again, moving among millions, yet never truly alone. Perhaps loneliness is not the absence of others, but the gentle reminder to notice life quietly and to let it notice you back.